Why did you even apply to our company, which requires a college degree, when you're just a high school dropout? Your resume isn't worth looking at. You don't even have the qualifications to apply.
During the final interview at a top-tier company, the interviewer, a graduate of a prestigious university, turned out to be my former classmate from high school who always looked down on me.
Decisions made, no job for a poor high school dropout. Got anything else to say?
The sound of tearing paper echoed in the interview room as the interviewer ripped up my resume. I was momentarily surprised, but then I smirked and retorted, "Good luck with your job search starting tomorrow." Huh? The interviewer looked confused, not understanding what I meant. Of course, he wouldn't understand now, but everything would become clear tomorrow, and he would be plunged into hell. I'm nervous. My name is Kevin. Dressed in a suit, I went to an interview at a certain company. This company, located in a prime location near the station, with its own building in downtown, was overwhelming with its magnificent structure. I entered nervously and waited quietly at the reception. Entering with a student's mindset was a fresh feeling. I was a so-called high school dropout, having left high school prematurely. During my high school years, I was subjected to a lot of harassment and bad-mouthing from my classmates, which eventually led me to become a truant, unable to attend school. I reminisced about those days. I'll never forget the days of harassment from my classmates.
Kevin, you're so gloomy and weird. Don't look at us.
The ringleader of the bullying was Jim. His grandfather was a city councilman with a lot of power, so Jim thought very highly of himself. He had many followers, and everyone looked up to him. On the other hand, I was introverted and ate a lot due to stress, so I was a bit chubby back then. This made me a target for teasing and harassment from my classmates.
Hey, fatty, move. You're blocking my way.
Does it smell like pig here? It stinks, doesn't it?
Jim's cronies would say this while snickering and looking at me. Jim seemed to enjoy it, watching and laughing. But I, who had good grades, once scored 100 on a test. The teacher was happy for me, as if it were his own achievement.
Kevin, you got 100 again on the test. Everyone should take a leaf out of his book.
Aw, come on, teacher. Why are you giving special treatment to Kevin?
We can't study as well as Kevin, can we?
Stop making excuses and study, you guys.
This only made my classmates resent me more, and I became more isolated. Jim, especially, seemed to dislike my indifference to currying favor.
His dad's not around, so he's got it easy.
Must be nice having no one at home to get mad at you.
Maybe he's secretly a mama's boy. Haha.
The fact that my father had passed away became another reason for mockery. I gradually withdrew into myself due to the relentless teasing and harassment, eventually leading to my truancy. My mother tried to protect me by complaining to the school, but Jim, being the son of a local influential figure and having a good public image, was believed by the teachers. That's right, at school, there was not a single person on my side, not even the teachers.
You've done nothing wrong, so don't blame yourself.
My mother, Mary, respected my decision and said it was okay for me not to go to school. She took me out to lift my spirits, even taking me to her workplace, and had me do simple chores to build my confidence. It helped me so much. I can't thank her enough for her support during those times. Years have passed since those days of gratitude, and now thanks to my mom's introduction. I work as an office clerk in a small firm. The reason I'm interviewing now is that the form is dissolving, and I was referred for the interview by the office manager. As I sat nervously in the waiting room, a man noticed my anxiety and struck up a conversation.
Are you also here for the interview today?
Yes, you too.
Yes. It's strangely nerve-wracking before an interview, isn't it? My name is Mike.
I'm Kevin. Let's both do our best. Talking to Mike, a recent graduate, in the waiting room helped ease my tension a bit. Then, looking around, he whispered,
But this company, while its business is attractive, there's talk on social media about the interviewer's high-handed attitude.
Really?
Not to eavesdrop, but I heard everything. I'm Jake. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Jake, another candidate with keen ears. He joined our conversation, sharing a story about a friend who had faced intimidating remarks in their interview. The more we talked, the more anxious I felt, but I shook off the nerves and took notes of their detailed stories.
Notes for the interview?
Yes, I thought it might be necessary. I have a suggestion for both of you. As I explained my proposal to the intrigued pair, I handed them something, which they accepted and tucked into their pockets. Then, with nerves high, the interview began. The interviewer was alone, and his face was familiar. It was Jim, my former high school classmate who had bullied me. Noticing me, Jim smirked unpleasantly. He enjoyed the situation just like he used to.
Kevin, the high school dropout, long time no see. What have you been up to since dropping out of high school? A neat?
As soon as I sat down, Jim mocked me, but I remained calm. Meanwhile, Jim bragged about graduating from a public university and becoming the rising star of the company, even talking about succeeding his grandfather as a councilman. All unsolicited.
Hey, are you listening? Same old silent guy, ho?
Of course, I'm listening. Please, continue. Seemingly annoyed by my quiet demeanor, Jim's mood visibly soured, but I didn't want to add fuel to the fire and urged him to go on. Taking this as a cue to continue, Jim's mood changed completely, and he happily resumed his monologue. As the interview neared its end, Jim, smirking again, posed another question.
Why would a high school dropout apply to our company, which requires a college degree?
I've written it in my resume, so it would be great if you could take a look.
Your resume isn't worth looking at, haha. You don't even have the qualifications to apply, haha.
In response to my calm demeanor, Jim suddenly grabbed my resume from the table and tore it to shreds.
No job for a poor high school dropout. Anything else you want to say?
As my resume fluttered around, torn apart by Jim, he grinned at my shocked reaction. But my surprise was only because I didn't expect my resume to be torn, as the rest of the conversation had gone as anticipated. I stood up calmly, forced a smile on my face, and said to Jim, "Good luck with your job search starting tomorrow."
Huh?
Jim, the interviewer, was taken aback by my unexpected words, looking utterly shocked. I left the place without further interaction. The next day, I was on my way to that same company, accompanied by my boss, David.
Wasn't he a former classmate of yours? You probably didn't want to see him, right?
David, who knew about my past, expressed his concern, but I shook my head. It's for work, so I won't be selfish. Besides, I'm not who I was back then. I want to teach him a lesson.
You'd be a scary enemy to have.
Initially, David looked intimidated by my determined expression, but in the end, he praised me as a reliable subordinate. He really is a dependable boss. I stood up calmly, forced a smile on my face, and said to Jim, David said that with determination as he knocked on the door of the CEO's office of the company where I had my interview the day before. Inside, CEO Michael was present. After seeing us, he asked his secretary to call the person responsible for the whole situation. Shortly after, Jim entered the room, his face pale.
Kevin, what the hell did you tell them at the company?
Jim, noticing me, rushed over and grabbed me by the collar.
Stop that, Jim.
However, after being sternly reprimanded by the CEO, Jim, who had grabbed me, glared at me fiercely and then roughly let go of my shirt. He sure knows how to obediently follow those with more power than himself.
Do you know why you've been called here?
Michael asked Jim, who responded with silence. Seeing this, Michael sighed and introduced David as a lawyer.
Nice to meet you, Jim. I'm David, a lawyer. We're here because several students are planning to file a lawsuit against the company for the mental distress caused by your oppressive interview techniques.
There seems to be some misunderstanding, Jim muttered, trying to downplay the situation. I didn't let him off the hook and took out a tablet I had prepared. I have proof of the oppressive interviews. I'll play the recordings from this tablet. I operated the tablet, playing each recording one by one.
You don't say much, do you? Aren't you told you lack personality? You're not pretty, are you? Shall I teach you how to be pretty? Oh, you graduated from that university. It's full of dummies, so you're probably useless for this company. Looks matter, you know. Ugly people should get plastic surgery before coming for an interview.
All these were in Jim's voice, and his face grew paler as he listened. The CEO's face was flushed red with anger. Although he hadn't known about it until now, he must be especially furious to have had such a person conducting interviews at his company. Of course, we have witnesses.
Please, call in those two gentlemen.
Understood.
Understanding the situation, the CEO instructed his secretary, who then left and returned with two individuals. Those two were Mike and Jake, whom Jim recognized and who had waited with me in the waiting room yesterday, each having their separate interviews. I had given voice recorders to these two gentlemen, who were also here for interviews. I asked them to start recording when their turn was close. Here's what we captured. I took the voice recorders from Mike and Jake and played them.
This is Mike. I was drawn to the attractive job description of your company.
You're dreaming if you think it's easy here. I'm strict, and I'll fire you quickly if you annoy me. Understand?
I'm Jake. I applied after seeing your job posting, eager to engage in this line of work.
It says here you have a good memory. That's it. Frankly, it's all about whether you can work or not. Well, you're from that university, so I guess you're useless, haha.
After playing each voice recorder and listening to the end, I turned off the recorders. Just like during my interview, both Mike and Jake had endured a barrage of harsh words followed by being subjected to Jim's boastful stories. As everyone's gaze turned to Jim, his face was sweaty, and he stammered in response.
This was all to test the students' resilience.
Some students have actually suffered mental and physical health issues due to your interviews. We have medical certificates to prove it, so we can't just write this off as a resilience test.
David then pulled out a doctor's diagnosis from his suit and presented it to Jim. Reacting impulsively, Jim snatched the diagnosis from David's hand and tore it up, just like he had done with my resume. I had anticipated this, so I informed him that we had kept the original diagnosis safe and only presented him with a copy. At this revelation, Jim's face turned beet red. He never learns from his own actions.
A high school dropout, huh? What are you trying to pull here?
Jim shifted his gaze from David to me, looking like he was about to grab me again. I think there's a misunderstanding here, so let me clarify. Yes, I dropped out of high school, but I went on to graduate from college.
Huh? What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind?
Jim, unable to comprehend what I was saying, tilted his head in laughter. I understood that someone with his limited understanding would find it hard to grasp. In fact, after dropping out of high school, I had taken the high school equivalency exam and passed. I then enrolled in a prestigious university's law school and later attended law graduate school. David was a friend of my late father and a lawyer. My mother had worked in David's office when I was in high school. During my truancy days, it was David who had given me small tasks at his office.
Hey, Kevin, you're doing great. You've got a bright future ahead of you.
I remember David being very kind to me, as I was allowed to come and go in his office from a young age, and he knew my situation well. My mom respected him greatly.
You can do it, Kevin. You'll pass for sure.
Encouraged by David, I completed my judicial clerkship at his office this year and successfully passed the final exams. David was overjoyed, embracing me as if it were his own achievement. I still work in his office today. Also, David occasionally gave lectures at the university as a visiting professor, where students approached him about oppressive interviews.
I'd really like you to go undercover, Kevin. How about it? Will you give it a try?
Me? I'm not sure. I don't have much confidence.
Don't worry. Just go for the interview and record it. By the way, here's the info on the interviewer.
I was shocked to see the name Jim and his photo on the document. It was definitely him, the one who had bullied me in high school. David, please let me handle this job.
Well, you're suddenly eager. Do you know the guy?
David asked tentatively, and when I reluctantly confirmed, he started to worry and even considered calling off the job, which made me laugh. His reaction back then was quite amusing. It was undoubtedly Jim, the same person who had harassed me in high school. Several students who had been subjected to Jim's oppressive interviews decided to sue, and it was natural for me to attend the interview without raising suspicion.
David and I have known each other for a long time. I was surprised when he asked to investigate our company, but I agreed because such interview practices should not be happening.
Michael and David were acquaintances, and they had arranged for my undercover operation. As Michael informed Jim on this, his face turned even paler.
We, as a company, need to take responsibility for this. We intend to compensate the victims who suffered under your interviews.
What?
We will also hold you accountable, Jim. We'll seek damages from you.
Michael then announced disciplinary dismissal to Jim for causing significant harm to the company.
No, boss, I didn't mean any harm. I was just testing their stress resilience.
Weren't you just relieving your own stress? Plus, it seems you've been under a lot of stress from your gambling losses.
Jim was known to be an avid gambler, often pouring money into gambling. He was frequently irritable after gambling losses, seemingly taking out his frustration on interviewees.
Boss, please forgive me. It wasn't intentional.
If I forgive you now, more victims will suffer, and I can bear that thought. Sorry, but I won't budge on my decision.
But please,
Jim pleaded with Michael, but he was firm and unyielding.
Even if it wasn't intentional, that doesn't make it right. I want you to understand that. David, I'd like to officially assign this case to you.
In that case, how about assigning Kevin for this task? He was the one who went undercover for this investigation, and if you agree, Michael, I'd like to recommend him.
Of course, that's fine. If you say so, I trust Kevin can handle it.
Leave it to me. I was determined to fulfill the task I had been given. Jim was still in disbelief, shaking his head in denial. He really doesn't know when to give up. Should I also sue you for defamation and insult? I've suffered mental and physical distress.
you don't look like it at all. Besides, there's no way I'd lose to someone like you, Kevin.
Shall we proceed with the legal process?
You can't do that. My grandfather won't allow it.
Jim threw a childish tantrum before fleeing the CEO's office. We were utterly dismayed that a man nearing 30 still relied on his grandfather, the city councilman's influence. Our investigation revealed that Jim had joined the company through his grandfather's connections. Because of this, he continued to act arrogantly, just like he did as a student. After he moved to the HR department, his attitude became a concern for the company, especially since it was affecting its reputation among job-seeking students. However, there was no concrete evidence at the time. That's why I collaborated with Mike and Jake, who had their interviews on the same day as me under the guise of a proposal, and had them carry voice recorders in their pockets. As expected, Jim's abusive language during the interviews served as evidence, leading to this lawsuit.
I can't believe the guy interviewing with us was a liar.
Do you actually have a lawyer's badge or something?
Right after leaving the CEO's office, Mike and Jake bombarded me with questions. It seemed like it was their first time meeting a lawyer, and they looked at me with eyes sparkling with admiration. Of course, here it is.
Wow.
I showed them my lawyer's badge, which I had kept hidden during the undercover operation, eliciting cheers from them.
I should have aimed to be a lawyer too, especially after that interview. I'm not sure if I passed. The CEO had surveillance cameras in the interview room, so he'll review the footage and inform you both of the results later.
That's great.
Mike and Jake were visibly relieved, making me feel somewhat guilty for involving them in the investigation. I reattached my lawyer's badge and apologized to them sincerely. I'm really sorry for dragging you both into this without revealing my identity. I made you both feel anxious, didn't I?
What are you talking about? If you hadn't gone undercover, we would have been unfairly rejected based on that interviewer's whims.
Seriously, we owe you big time for saving us from an unjust rejection.
Hearing them say that made me feel that my undercover efforts were worthwhile. Seeing their relieved expressions, I felt glad that I could make them happy, and at the same time, relieved that we were able to prevent any further harm.
Since we're all here, how about having lunch together?
That sounds great, Kevin. Will you join us?
I'd love to. After checking my watch and seeing I had time before my afternoon duties, I agreed to join them for lunch. It felt like making new friends. Their friendly demeanor naturally brought a smile to my face. Later, I learned that Mike and Jake were successfully hired, while Jim was officially fired. I conveyed the news to them, and they were overjoyed. They thanked me again, so I emphasized that it was their own abilities that led to their success. Still, I bet they were really thrilled to be hired. Later, they invited me out for drinks, and I eagerly anticipated it. Meanwhile, Jim hadn't shown up at the company since storming out of the CEO's office. His parents had handled all the formalities with the company on his behalf. I wondered why he hadn't taken responsibility himself, but with the company's official decision, there was nothing more to say.
I heard Jim got fired from the company.
It's only natural. Honestly, it's a relief.
Apparently, Jim's arrogant behavior at the office meant no one was sorry to see him go. The atmosphere in the office has improved a lot thanks to you. I'm really glad I left it in your hands, Kevin. Thank you again. The CEO expressed his gratitude to me over the phone. I could almost see his happy face as he spoke. Just when I thought everything was settled, the next day brought a new development. The next day, Jim and his grandfather, James, visited David's law office.
I heard there's a lawyer named Kevin here. Could I meet with him? I'd like to discuss the matter regarding my grandson's commotion.
James, who arrived with a burly man in a black suit, asked for me. Surprised by the sudden visit, I braced myself, but James bowed to me sincerely.
I'm sorry for what my grandson did. I wasn't aware of his actions, and as his grandfather, I feel responsible.
I had heard James was a city council member, but he was more humble than I expected. He had believed in Jim, who was academically successful and good at maintaining appearances, and was unaware of the harassment Jim had inflicted. It seemed that Jim had been silencing others and using his grandfather's influence to his advantage. I never thought he would use my influence to bully others, James explained.
After asking his friends and local acquaintances, I found out he's been a fool. First, I want to apologize to you for the harassment since high school.
Saying so, James bowed again. Jim, though sulking, bowed slightly as well. I wish Jim would learn from his grandfather. Please raise your head. If you keep bowing, I feel like I'll be struck by lightning. I intervened, fearing James would keep bowing indefinitely. James then told me he intended to retire from politics because of this incident.
And I want to ask David to be my successor.
Me, I'm honored, but
David was planning to close his office and run for election, but being James's successor was beyond his expectations. His reaction showed he hadn't fully grasped the reality yet.
Is everything okay with this? Shouldn't we discuss it more?
You're famous as the only trustworthy lawyer in town, well-connected and well-regarded by citizens. There's no mistaking your qualifications. I'm not making this decision lightly.
James mentioned that since he was retiring, he would ask his supporters to endorse David. James's son wasn't interested in politics, and Jim was out of the question, so he had no one else to ask.
Okay, if you're sure, I'll take on the role.
Thank you. I'm counting on you.
David and James shook hands, agreeing to the proposal. Jim was set to help with James' form.
While I'm alive, I won't let you do anything wrong. I'll be strict.
James declared that enthusiastically, and Jim's face turned even paler beside him. Months later, David was successfully elected, and I took over his law office.
Doing well, Kevin.
Even now, David visits the office when he has time, and I'm truly grateful. To me, David is like a second father. I never thought our relationship would become so real. David, did you go on a date with Mom?
What are you grinning about? Is it bad to go out?
I teased David, who asked me back bashfully. Yes, recently David and my mom got married, having developed a relationship from mutual respect. No, it's great to see you so happy. I chuckled at David's newlywed happiness, radiating a joyful aura. Of course, I was happy for their happiness, and having David as my new father was an honor. It was easy to accept him because he had always been there for my mother and me. He has always been supporting us endlessly. He helped me through my mother during the times I was harassed in high school. And it was him who encouraged me and suggested taking the high school equivalency exam when I gave up on pursuing college. I am forever grateful to David. As for Jim, he's now struggling with a family farm business. With James, who retired as a city council member, keeping a strict watch on him, Jim apparently can't indulge in his previous habits of gambling and partying, not even managing to go out for drinks. I heard rumors that Jim's former classmates, who used to follow him around, don't even give him a second glance now. When I was set to meet everyone from high school at the reunion, I felt a sense of unease, recalling those times. But now, with Jim gone, all those who had followed him looked at me, now a lawyer, with respect.
I was just following Jim's orders back then. I really am sorry for what I did to you.
Kevin, I'm truly sorry. If it's okay with you, please give me your contact info. Let's meet up and have a drink sometime.
I accepted their apologies and ended the reunion on good terms. I've faced many hardships, but I'm glad for everything I've been through. I don't consider my truancy and inability to attend high school as a waste of time. The hurt I experienced back then has shaped me into someone who now wants to stand by and support those who are weak and wounded. This change in me is undoubtedly thanks to David. Now I aspire to be a lawyer who can empathize with others, just like David.
Kate, we have a problem. Sarah's documents have been tampered with, and if we don't do something, the deal will fall through. Please, you have to do something.
Ethan stood pleadingly at the desk of Kate, the manager. His face was pale, the very image of desperation. Kate, too, looked shocked, her mouth agape as if to say, "You can't be serious." Right, it's today when Louis, the COO of our major client, World Bay Corporation, was coming to the U.S. The deal, which Sarah was in charge of, with Ethan supporting, was expected to be our biggest yet. We're looking at the deal here that's poised to hit the highest revenue we've ever seen in our company's history. A whopping $100 million. A failure would be a disaster for the company.
What are you talking about? We thoroughly checked the documents yesterday. There's no way they could have been altered. Check again.
Kate tried to calm Ethan.
I've checked multiple times. The original documents are nowhere to be found. Only the altered data.
Ethan, go and get Sarah. Get Sarah.
Sarah's currently explaining the situation to Louis, the COO of World Bay Corporation, and can't leave.
No choice then. Making me deal with this. You guys won't be forgiven later.
She entered the conference room with Ethan. As I was left alone in the office, worrying about the big trouble, I was startled by a voice from behind asking, "What's wrong?" "George, when did you get here?"
I just arrived. It seemed like something serious was going on.
George, the director of our department, always easygoing, said this to me in his usual carefree manner. I explained the situation since it was a major issue for the company. The COO of our major client, World Bay Corporation, is here for a meeting, but there seems to be a holdup because the documents Sarah prepared were tampered with. Ethan came to call me, and manager Kate has gone to offer help in the conference room now. Right after I finished explaining, George said this.
Kate can't handle this. You go help, Michael.
Me?
Yes, you. You can get through this.
I didn't know why George was so confident, but he wasn't wrong. I was sure I could handle this crisis. Understood. Without hesitation, I said that and knocked on the conference room door before entering. Inside, Kate was desperately explaining to COO Lewis, with Sarah about to cry and Ethan looking helpless.
Oh no, what are you saying? We can't proceed with the deal based on that explanation. We'll have to start over.
It was indeed a bad situation. In that moment, seeing me, Kate said,
Michael, why are you coming in now? It's a critical moment. Your presence ruins everything. Go make some coffee.
Kate ordered me with a fierce look. Then George, standing behind me, said,
Kate, you're the one to make coffee. Leave the negotiation to Michael.
George, I hate to say it, but Michael is the least capable employee in our department, so I cannot agree with letting him handle this crucial negotiation.
Kate was desperately trying to calm herself. Kate, this isn't a suggestion. It's an order. Just go ahead and do as you're told, he said firmly, unlike his usual gentle manner. At those words, Kate couldn't object, but stepped back with an unconvinced look, glaring at me.
Excuse me, I'm George, the department head. I'm sorry for any inconvenience caused. Michael will take over. He's an excellent employee, a Harvard graduate.
George quickly approached Lewis and exchanged greetings with him for the first time.
What?
Huh?
Indeed, you seem to have a smart look, Michael. I feel reassured discussing with you.
After exchanging greetings with George, Lewis extended his hand for a handshake to me. As Kate and Ethan looked on in astonishment, I hurried over to Lewis. Pleased to meet you, I said as we shook hands, and then I sat next to Sarah. I'm Michael Anderson, a 30-year-old in my 5th year of working. I work for a major jewelry manufacturing company. Though it's my 5th year working, I've only been at this company for 2 months. I was searching for a new job due to various concerns at my previous company when, by chance, the president of this company knew my uncle, who spoke on my behalf, and I was hired mid-career. Just as I joined, an initiative to boost overseas business was launched, and several members from what had been a domestic sales team, including me, were reassigned to this new project. My manager is Kate Smith, a woman about 10 years my senior, and then there's Sarah Brown, 1 year senior than me. You joined the company straight out of college. There's also Ethan Martinez, who has less experience in the workforce than I do, but with more time at this company since he joined as a new graduate. Working with this team can be troublesome, as 2 of them seem particularly skilled at looking down on me. Those 2 are Kate and Ethan. Sarah, on the other hand, is kind and considerate, popular across departments, and I was charmed by her from my first day. And she's beautiful. I can't imagine Sarah ever looking down on anyone, not in my past or future life. On the contrary, when it comes to the other two, they lack so much charm as individuals that they could really stand to take a leaf out of Sarah's book when it comes to decency. First, Kate. She's a genius at issuing commands and exuding an aura of intimidation. Even before I arrived, I heard she was disliked by everyone in the sales department. It was on my first day. Despite my polite greeting, she blatantly ignored me. Wondering if she was hard of hearing, I tried again louder and closer, but she ignored me once more, even though our eyes met. Seeing my confusion, Ethan commented,
"Don't worry. Kate is like that with everyone. That's why she's disliked."
So I thought such people do exist and decided not to let it bother me. However, I was surprised to find that Ethan, who offered me that advice, also had a problematic personality.
Oh my, so the new guy is here. I was curious, but turns out he's useless. The last thing we need in our busy department is someone who can't pull their weight. After hearing about Michael's education from Kate, she didn't know. He must be a high school grad at best. I'll use polite language since he's technically senior, but I've been here longer, so I'll make him work hard.
I overheard Ethan saying this to a colleague in the break room shortly after joining. Well, it's fine. I have my sole source of comfort, the goddess Sarah. Her smile motivates me to do my best.
Ethan, you forgot to clean the coffee maker again.
The next morning, Kate's shrill voice filled the office.
Sorry, but the coffee duty has been handed over to Michael since yesterday, so it's not my fault.
Ethan hastily defended himself, feeling sorry for him getting scolded first thing in the morning by a boss with such mood swings. I was setting up my computer and reading the company manual. Wait, did you just say my name? I looked up at Ethan.
Michael, you take over a job and then just talk. So incompetent right from the start. I wonder why the president even hired you mid-career.
Kate raised her voice in anger. It seemed the direction of her anger had shifted to me. But I don't recall Ethan asking me to take over coffee duties, nor did I offer to. A complete misunderstanding. As I was about to argue back, Ethan said,
Kate, I'm going to go to the break room and show Michael how to make coffee.
He forcefully led me to the break room, signaling me to follow. Why are you lying? I wasn't asked to be in charge of coffee.
Come on, it's all about helping each other out when we're in a bind.
I figured Ethan must have been the low man on the totem pole, bossed around by Kate before I arrived, so I felt a bit sorry for him. All right, I guess making coffee every morning isn't such a big deal. Thanks, he said bluntly, leaving me alone in the break room and quickly returning to his desk. Well, whatever. I didn't need to ask how to use the coffee maker, and I found the coffee grounds easily enough by rummaging through the cupboard, so it was no problem. It seems like Kate was waiting for her coffee, so I would go ahead and make everyone's. But when I handed it to her, she just took it without saying thanks and stayed silent, still being her usual standoffish self. I briefly thought it would be amusing if she was guarded, but even if she were, I knew I could never have any feelings for Kate. In contrast, Sarah's graceful behavior and consideration were so perfect that just seeing her made all the unpleasant things vanish.
Thank you. If you're ever busy or having a hard time, please let me take over anytime.
I almost blurted out, "Are you an angel?" "No, a goddess," but I held back. Her speaking politely even to a person with less tenure like me was adorable. I even found myself fantasizing, stupidly smiling at the thought that I wouldn't mind if Sarah were mean to me, but it turns out I wasn't the only one who adored her, and that person was very close by. A month after I joined, our biggest client opportunity since the launch of the Overseas Business Promotion Department came in. A company called World Bay Corporation, an overseas jewelry retailer, might place a large order for our high-priced jewelry. If all went well, it could mean about $100 million in sales. Our company had mainly dealt with domestic companies until now, but this deal was on a much larger scale, truly a result of our efforts to promote overseas business. I saw our department head, George, smiling as he came to Kate's desk to talk about it. That deal, it's just something that got passed to us from the domestic sales team. Kate didn't contribute anything. Ethan had muttered so Kate couldn't hear. After George left, Kate looked around at the three of us and said,
"We absolutely must land this contract. It's non-negotiable. Of course, Sarah is the only one I can trust with this. All right, I'm counting on you."
Understood.
I'll send the details by email later. Check them. The COO, Louis, will be visiting us soon, so please prepare the negotiation documents by then. I'm counting on you.
Kate then left for lunch without doing anything herself.
Kate isn't going to do anything. Huh? Sarah, I'll help with anything. So let's work hard together.
Thank you. I'd be overwhelmed on my own, so I might need your help.
Sarah then turned to me.
Michael, I might ask you for help too when things get tough. Sorry, but please.
Of course, anytime. I was about to say when Ethan cut in.
Nat, Sarah, I wouldn't rely on Michael. He's probably just a high school grad with no qualifications. I graduated from a community college, so I'm more reliable.
Don't talk like that.
But it's true, isn't it?
Not wanting to argue in front of Sarah, I kept silent. And so, Ethan kept offering his help to Sarah.
I can help you out. If you're free tonight, maybe we can talk over drinks.
Ethan's straightforwardness was obvious, his actions clearly showing his interest in Sarah. Direct and honest, you might say. Sarah always declined his invitations, leading me to speculate she might have a boyfriend. Once, as a joke, I said the following and it ended with such an exchange. "I'll join you for drinks."
No, that won't be necessary.
And so, a month later, on the day COO Louis was visiting, Sarah had gathered all sorts of documents for the negotiation. Those were from our jewelry specs to our factory's production capabilities and delivery schedules, all neatly compiled and even translated into Spanish.
COO, Louis is fluent in English, so you don't have to try too hard in Spanish.
Yes, but I still think it's better to communicate as much as possible in the client's native language for the best outcome.
At the same time, the Overseas Business Promotion Department has seen an increase in deals with overseas partners. While they weren't major clients, Ethan and I were each tasked with different jobs, keeping us busy every day. And then, weeks flew by in a flurry. One day, I had been out for meetings both that day and the day before, not stepping foot in the office, constantly on the go. After wrapping up my meetings successfully and returning to the office, I walked in to find a crisis unfolding.
Kate, it's serious. The documents Sarah prepared have been tampered with, and if nothing is done, the deal will fall through. Please, do something.
I signed pleading at Kate's desk, his face pale with desperation. Kate, too, looked shocked, her mouth agape as if to say, "You can't be serious." Right, it's today when Lewis, the COO of our major client, World Bay Corporation, was coming to the US. The deal, which Sarah was in charge of, with Ethan supporting, was expected to be our biggest yet. We're looking at the deal here that's poised to hit the highest revenue we've ever seen in our company's history. A whopping $100 million. A failure would be a disaster for the company.
What are you talking about? We thoroughly checked the documents yesterday. There's no way they could have been altered. Check again.
I've checked multiple times. The original documents are nowhere to be found. Only the altered data.
Ethan, go and get Sarah. Get Sarah.
Sarah's currently explaining the situation to Lewis, the COO of World Bay Corporation, and can't leave.
No choice then. Making me deal with this. You guys won't be forgiven later.
She entered the conference room with Ethan. As I was left alone in the office, worrying about the big trouble, I was startled by a voice from behind asking, "What's wrong?" "George, when did you get here?"
I just arrived. It seemed like something serious was going on.
George, the director of our department, always easygoing, said this to me in his usual carefree manner. I explained the situation since it was a major issue for the company. The COO of our major client, World Bay Corporation, is here for a meeting, but there seems to be a holdup because the documents Sarah prepared were tampered with. Ethan came to call me, and manager Kate has gone to offer help in the conference room now. Right after I finished explaining, George said this.
Kate can't handle this. You go help, Michael.
Me?
Yes, you. You can get through this.
I didn't know why George was so confident, but he wasn't wrong. I was sure I could handle this crisis. Understood. Without hesitation, I said that and knocked on the conference room door before entering. Inside, Kate was desperately explaining to Lewis, with Sarah about to cry and Ethan looking helpless.
Sarah, what are you saying? We can't proceed with the deal based on that explanation. We'll have to start over.
It was indeed a bad situation. In that moment, seeing me, Kate said,
Michael, why are you coming in now? It's a critical moment. Your presence ruins everything. Go make some coffee.
Kate ordered me with a fierce look. Then George, standing behind me, said,
Kate, you're the one to make coffee. Leave the negotiation to Michael.
George, I hate to say it, but Michael is the least capable employee in our department, so I cannot agree with letting him handle this crucial negotiation.
Kate was desperately trying to calm herself. Kate, this isn't a suggestion. It's an order. Just go ahead and do as you're told, he said firmly, unlike his usual gentle manner. At those words, Kate couldn't object but stepped back with an unconvinced look, glaring at me.
Excuse me, I'm George, the department head. I'm sorry for any inconvenience caused. Michael will take over. He's an excellent employee, a Harvard graduate.
George quickly approached Louis and exchanged greetings with him for the first time.
What?
Huh?
Indeed, you seem to have a smart look, Michael. I feel reassured discussing with you.
After exchanging greetings with George, Louis extended his hand for a handshake to me. As Kate and Ethan looked on in astonishment, I hurried over to Louis. "Pleased to meet you," I said as we shook hands, and then I sat next to Sarah. Ethan looked at my face with expression that seemed to say, "What on earth?" George, unusually serious, whispered in my ear with a smile.
Michael, I know you understand, but this is a crucial negotiation for our company. Now is the time to rely on your skills.
Understood. After saying that, I took a deep breath and began speaking to Louis in fluent Spanish. Kate and Ethan watched me with their eyes wide and mouths agape. I apologized to Louis in Spanish for the somehow mix-up with the documents. Louis seemed to cheer up being able to proceed in his native language. Then, I quietly said to Sarah, "Please check if there's any trace left of the tampered document data. I'll keep the conversation going."
Ethan has been looking, but there's nothing. Plus, we can access the shared folder where the deleted data should be.
From this company laptop, you can access folders restricted to executives. Try searching from here. I handed her my laptop. Surprised but understanding the urgency, she followed my instructions. After a while,
Michael, I found it. My document is in the executive folder.
Great. Let's print it out quickly and hand it over to Louis.
Okay.
Sarah headed to the copier. It seems the problem will be solved. Michael, you are an excellent employee. With you here, I feel reassured about moving forward with our business. Louis commented after watching our interaction. Kate looked a bit relieved, but also had a complicated expression on her face. Soon after, Sarah returned with the correct documents. Louis was satisfied with the negotiation documents, including Sarah's Spanish explanations. We successfully agreed on the deal. After seeing Louis out and returning to our desks, Kate and Ethan gave me meaningful looks. Kate was the first to speak up.
Michael, if you were fluent in Spanish, you should have said so from the start. Why are you embarrassing me like this? And what's with Harvard? Seriously, what's George thinking? Telling such a lie. What's he gonna do when Louis finds out?
Exactly, Michael. Helping us out like that just makes us look bad.
I had no intention of embarrassing anyone. I just wanted to save our company from a major issue. And my Harvard degree is real.
If it weren't for Michael, we would have lost a $100 million deal. I can only be grateful to him. I'm truly sorry for my mistake.
Sarah immediately stood up and offered a sincere apology. I quickly said, "Sarah, it's not your fault. It's clear someone tampered with the documents. You're a victim here. You don't need to apologize."
Right. Sarah did nothing wrong. And Michael, stop making up your educational background.
Sarah was on the verge of tears. And, "Oh, just stop causing me trouble," Kate said in anger. Then the door clicked open.
Bob.
Our company's president, Bob Walker, stood there.
I heard there was trouble, but I'm grateful you secured the contract. Thank you.
It's nothing. We'll make sure this never happens again.
Hearing this, Sarah quickly stood up.
I'm so sorry.
Sarah, it's not your fault. No need to apologize. We've investigated the issue. It was the doing of an employee from another department. We found out after checking the computers. Unfortunately, that employee will be terminated. Tampering with important negotiation documents is a serious offense. Sarah, you did nothing wrong, so don't worry.
Thank you.
Bob continued.
We will review our security and update our data handling rules tomorrow. Please check the notice when it comes out. And Michael.
Yes, I responded, startled at being suddenly addressed.
You really helped us out. George told me about your crisis management and excellent Spanish skills. I'm grateful we got someone as talented as you through your uncle's introduction. We've just started our overseas business promotion department, and we'll be relying on your skills. Of course, we'll increase your position and salary accordingly. Any employee who interferes with his work will be seen as obstructing the company's business and will be dealt with accordingly.
Bob said this, looking intently at Kate and then glancing at Ethan.
Bob, I wanted to ask, is it really true that Michael graduated from Harvard?
Bob, I've stopped hiding it, so it's okay to disclose now.
It's true, Kate.
That evening, looking more tired than usual, Kate and Ethan left right at quitting time, and as I was getting ready to leave, George slapped me on the shoulder.
Good work today. Would you like to grab a drink?
It was a rare invitation, so I happily accepted with a definitely. Sarah was still at the office too, and George invited her along, so the three of us went out together. We left the company and turned into a back alley, entering a stylish restaurant that George frequented. I've always had a good impression of George among my superiors. He's a gentleman, soft-spoken, and liked by everyone. Yet when it's time to work, he doesn't hold back and is very capable. And having dinner with Sarah after work was a first for me, which made me happy. She said she wasn't good with alcohol, but as she opened the bottle for our first beer, she looked so cute. She's older than me, so it might be rude to call her cute, but it was true.
Really? Today? Our company was saved thanks to you too. I invited you out as a thank you. The work data, whatever it may be, goes into a separate folder if deleted. That folder can only be accessed by a limited number of executives. But I trusted you, Michael, so I gave you access just in case. That came in handy this time.
I heard from Bob that the person who tampered with the documents has been identified.
Yes, that's right. That's partly why I thought it was important to tell you. The culprit was Emma from the domestic business department.
I had my suspicions.
It turns out it was a complicated mess involving romantic relationships between Sarah, the female employee Emma, and another male employee, John. Seriously, I was disappointed because Sarah was popular and I thought there might be love troubles, but I was relieved to learn that Sarah wasn't actually dating anyone. Emma, who liked John, was apparently rejected because John had a crush on Sarah. This led to Emma's act of revenge due to her grudge. Sarah had been harassed by Emma before, so Sarah was completely innocent but got caught in the crossfire. Being beautiful might have its advantages, but it also seemed to bring trouble. So, Sarah is a wonderful woman. You already have someone decided, right? Not so subtly, George laughed at me.
No, I'm not seeing anyone.
I blurted out what, loudly. It caused George to burst into laughter.
But to think we'd have a Harvard graduate join our company.
Wait, George, you knew about that too. I thought only Bob knew. I had informed Bob, the president, about my educational background when I joined the company, but I had asked him to keep it private.
Yeah, Bob mentioned you didn't want to disclose your education, but as a director and someone he trusted, he let me in on it, making sure not to tell Kate.
Why did you want to hide your prestigious education?
I actually worked at a Spanish company right after graduating where I didn't hide my education, but my coworker was being ridiculed because of me. Michael, you went to Harvard, was making comments like he went to some low-tier university or something like that. That coworker ended up leaving the company because of it. But working together, I also made a mistake. I realized then that there was nothing but prejudice based on education, and I started questioning the value of my Harvard graduate title. So when I got the offer from this company, I asked Bob to keep my education a secret.
And because of that, Kate and Ethan thought you were just a high school graduate, looking down on you.
Yay, compared to my previous company, it was interesting to see how differently people treated me without knowing my background.
But Sarah was different, right? Actually, about a month after you joined, I asked Sarah her impression of you, and...
George, please stop. It's embarrassing, Sarah said, her face turning beet red.
Well, let me say it without worrying about it. She said with a bright smile that you're kind and considerate. A truly wonderful man. I chuckled because I actually didn't ask her what she thinks of you as a guy. I just asked about her impression as a colleague. She blushed when I teased her about liking you.
And then, I was eager to know Sarah's response to his asking, "Do you like him?" But George stopped there, leaving me hanging. Before hearing the rest of the story, I realized in a silent exchange between us guys that I should express my feelings to Sarah. 2 months later, my work was recognized, and I was promoted to the manager of the Overseas Business Promotion Department. Former manager, Kate, had been demoted to a regular employee handling product management, likely due to her history of neglecting her duties and having a bad reputation among the staff for always leaving work early. Ethan, since my promotion, stopped his cocky behavior towards me. He's working under me in the same department, but he's not exactly friendly either. I suppose that is understandable. After all, not only did I become a manager suddenly, which he probably didn't like, but there was another thing that definitely made things worse for him.
What should we have for dinner tonight?
Sarah asked, gripping my arm tightly and leaning in close as we walked to the train station. Sarah, maybe we shouldn't hold arms here. We might run into someone from work.
It's fine. We're not doing anything wrong. Everyone at work already knows we're dating.
But what about the men at work who liked you? What if they do something to me?
If anyone tries to harm you, I'll protect you with all my might.
Sarah said, making a fist. Her gesture was so endearing that I let go of her arm only to grasp her hand again, and we boarded the train hand in hand. Sarah and I started dating and quickly moved in together. I want to express my utmost gratitude for finding a reliable partner. I cherish those who believe in me for who I am, not for my title. I'll work hard and make her happy. Looking at a wedding advertisement in the train, I resolved in my heart, all right.
What's all right?
What if I said fine dining?
Dinner's gonna be steak.
Feeling even happier, I smiled, way to go.
A loser like you probably gets a bonus of about $100, right? I got $50,000, man.
After all, mocking me a lot, Logan asked me like he finished me off. I don't even remember what my monthly income was. My wife, Grace, manages our finances, so I don't keep track of our monthly income. Hearing that, Logan laughed out loud again and said, "Man, how can you live like that? Not even remembering your own salary, your memory must be shot." He said that, looking down on me disrespectfully. Suddenly, a beautiful woman entered the reunion venue and walked straight towards me.
Mr. Miller, as CEO, is $10 million okay for this year's compensation?
Yay, that's fine. At my words, all my classmates buzzed with astonishment.
$10 million.
Logan looked at me and the woman back and forth with disbelief.
Hey, who is this woman, and what's this about being a CEO? $10 million. What are you talking about?
Logan asked me, clearly confused. I'm George Miller. I run a company at 55. Our company manages logistics. Simply put, we're in the business of delivering packages purchased online to customers. After a monumental failure in university entrance exams, I attended a local third-tier university and then worked for a local company. But I never quite fit in there either. I stutter, and it gets worse when I'm nervous. Because of this, I was bullied throughout elementary, middle, and high school. Lacking self-confidence and struggling to interact with others, I was harassed at my job and quit after about 6 months. After that, I worked as a freelancer for a while. Being quite proficient with computers, I managed to get by as a systems engineer, earning just enough to live on. I thought I might as well continue freelancing. But then I realized something. I could live without ever stepping outside. I did all my shopping online. The convenience of potentially receiving packages the same day made it all too easy to overspend. I predicted that online shopping would only continue to grow. What would become scarce then were delivery services. With this in mind, I started my own company at 26, managing delivery services. Now, our company has grown to employ over 100 people. However, my stutter hasn't improved, so all the greetings and speeches required of a CEO are handled by my brother, Joseph. Joseph joined my company right after graduating from college. He's now an excellent vice president of our company.
Got the speech for next month's CEO's address ready?
Nah, not yet. Can you do it for me instead? Next month, we have the welcoming ceremony for the new hires. Joseph's going to be taking care of the speeches there too.
I could do it, but you know, it'll be obvious. My writing's pretty childish, and I can't trap things up as neatly as you can. Plus, the new employees probably want to hear from you.
Joseph has always thought highly of me. Being 5 years younger might play a part, but he's such a dear brother who always looks up to me. Got it. I'll write it up by today.
Thanks. By the way, isn't your high school reunion tomorrow? Are you really going? You don't have to, you know.
It's understandable for Joseph to be worried because I was bullied in high school as well. So, I don't have many fond memories of that time. Yay, some close friends of mine will be there, and I want to see them. Well, if I want to leave, I can just leave.
If you say so. But if anything happens, just call me right away.
Joseph is a bit overprotective of me, a trait he got from our mom. Because of my stutter, my mom always worried and accompanied me everywhere. Naturally, Joseph always came along, so that overprotectiveness towards me is probably ingrained in him. Thanks, I replied and went back to my work. The next day, I was getting ready for the reunion. Lacking any sense of fashion, my wife, Grace, helped me pick out an outfit.
Yay, that looks good. You're tall, so everything suits you.
Grace is another person who thinks highly of me. Thanks. I feel more confident hearing that from you.
It suits you really well. You can come back whenever today. Just don't drink too much. Joseph is dropping you off at the place, right?
Seems like it. Joseph's overprotectiveness is in full swing today. Soon after, Joseph came to pick me up, and we headed to the reunion venue. By this age, I've somewhat gotten used to being looked down upon for my stutter. I figured I'd just talk to the people I wanted to talk to at the reunion. That was what I thought. Today was a reunion for my class during senior year of high school. There weren't any bullies from that class. But as we arrived at the venue, my eyes widened in surprise. Seeing my reaction, Joseph looked where I was looking. There was Logan, who had persistently bullied me during my sophomore year.
What? Why is he here?
Joseph knew Logan as well. After all, the situation with Logan had escalated to the point where our parents had to get involved, so Joseph was familiar with him.
George, that's Logan, right? He wasn't supposed to come today.
No, but
maybe we should just leave.
Joseph seemed to prefer keeping me away from Logan and tried to take me back home. I managed to convince Joseph, and we entered the venue. My good friend, Steve, was already inside the place. I sat down next to Steve. Why is Logan here? He wasn't in our class senior year.
Some guy who was friends with Logan just invited him without asking. Seriously annoying.
Since Steve and I have been friends since sophomore year, he's well aware of Logan. Steve always stood up for me, but he never directly received any harassment from Logan. But it seems Logan left a bad impression on Steve too. As the reunion got underway, I was having a good time catching up with Steve. Logan didn't bother me and was engrossed in conversation with another group. I thought the reunion would end without incident. With that thought, I headed to the restroom. There, I ran into Logan.
Huh, aren't you Stutter Man?
Stutter Man was the nickname Logan used for me. It was a nickname given to mock my stutter, and Logan and his friends always called me by it. Hey, 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 long, long, long time. Standing in front of Logan, I got so nervous that I stuttered beautifully. Logan burst into laughter upon hearing me.
That's what I thought. You are Stutter Man. Well, you haven't changed at all. Still living every day with your stutter. That cracks me up.
Logan was patting my shoulder, laughing. Stop, stop, stop it. All I could do was weakly respond, wishing I could escape the situation.
Let's grab a drink at least. You flanked your college entrance exams and ended up at a terrible university, right? I want to hear all about that.
This is hell. That was my only thought as I looked up to the sky. Logan forcibly dragged me back to the reunion table. Seeing Logan and me return together, Steve rushed over with a worried look.
Hey, Logan. What are you doing to George? Back off.
Here comes the shadow. I'm not doing anything, just catching up on old times since it's the reunion. You go drink over there. I want to drink with Stutter Man.
Saying so, Logan shoved Steve, causing him to fall on his behind.
You.
Steve, it's okay. I'll just talk for a bit, then come back. I managed to stutter out a response, indicating for Steve to go back without me. Once Logan sets his mind on something, he won't budge. I didn't know what he wanted to talk about, but I figured he'd be satisfied after a little while. Steve looked worried as he returned to his seat.
So, did you even graduate college? Your friends must have found you creepy, right?
That's how Logan continued to mock my stutter, while his entourage laughed loudly, turning the reunion into a nightmare for me. I ended up telling them about my life after high school. I ended up telling Logan and his friends about my life after high school, just as they said. How I failed my college entrance exams and endured 4 terrible years at a lousy university, and how I struggled to find a job due to my stutter, only to quit the company I finally joined after half a year. Logan and his friends were thrilled with my misfortunes.
Seriously, I've never met such a loser before. So, you quit your job and became an unemployed. That's insane. Surely, you're still unemployed.
No, I'm working now, but...
Good for you, finding a company desperate enough to hire a loser like you.
Laughing crudely, Logan kept slapping my back, and the surrounding laughter made my head spin. I just wanted to leave as soon as possible.
I went to a pretty good university, so I landed a job at a top company. Our pay is amazing, and I actually feel sorry for you.
Hey, can we stop? I want to talk to Steve over there. Growing increasingly uncomfortable, I tried to excuse myself, but Logan was laughing so hard he was crying.
But before you go, just tell me this. What's your monthly income? A loser like you probably gets a bonus of about $100, right? I got $50,000, man.
I don't even remember what my monthly income was. Since Grace handles our salary, I have no idea how much is being deposited each month. Hearing this, Logan laughed out loud again. Man, how can you live like that? Not even remembering your own salary, your memory must be shot. He said this, looking down on me disdainfully. Can I leave now?
Wait a minute. We're not done talking, are we?
That's not what he said. I feel like crying. Why did this happen? I just wanted to see my old classmates that I got along with after so long. Suddenly, a beautiful woman entered our reunion venue. All the men were gaping at her.
Who is this lady? She's stunning.
Logan was clearly smitten by the woman, who had the aura of an actress. She walked straight towards me.
Mr. Miller, I need to discuss something important with you.
Oh, yay. What is it? Seeing the woman talking to me, Logan looked at me with a puzzled expression.
Mr. Miller, as CEO, is $10 million an appropriate compensation for this year?
Yay, that's fine. Hearing this, all my classmates buzzed with astonishment.
$10 million.
Logan looked at me and the woman back and forth in disbelief.
Hey, stutter man, who's she? And what's this about you being a CEO? $10 million.
Logan was clearly confused, not knowing what to ask.
I am Emily, George's executive assistant at the company, led by him. The vice president asked me to urgently confirm this matter regarding compensation.
Joseph.
Yes.
Why Joseph suddenly wanted to confirm my compensation now. But the atmosphere changed completely, and I finally felt I could breathe properly.
Hey, stutter man, explain. What's this joke about you being a CEO? How much did you pay her to pretend? It's all an act, right?
How can someone be so cynical?
So, you're Logan.
Emily said understandingly, looking at Logan with a cold gaze.
What's up with that?
It looks like you've been underestimating George. Do you even know what kind of company he runs and its revenue? George has achieved and earned far more than you can.
Emily is an excellent secretary, but she's known for having strong likes and dislikes. Her arguments with Joseph over me are a common sight in the office. Embarrassingly, those arguments are often about who cares for me more.
I can't forgive you ruined the reunion that George was looking forward to. I hate men like you, who are scum of the earth, the most in the world.
Logan is visibly hurt by being called the most hated by a beautiful woman.
As a man, you're truly worthless. Is it fun living like that? Don't look at me with such a stupid face.
Emily doesn't hold back when she dislikes someone. Being harshly criticized by her like this seems so tough that countless male employees have left because of it. Hey, cut it out. Seriously, Joseph, what is he thinking sending Emily here all of a sudden? As I said, so tilting my head, Joseph entered the room at just the right moment.
Hey, Logan, it's like you treated George so well, huh?
Joseph's manner of speaking was completely thuggish. As soon as he entered, Joseph was fuming, and I was even more confused about what was happening. As for Logan, after being scorned by Emily and shouted at by Joseph, he looked like he was about to cry. Joseph, what got into you all of a sudden?
Come on, I heard everything Logan was saying to you. I can't take it anymore. I've always thought I could never forgive him.
You heard what? Completely bewildered, I was stunned.
I called Joseph. I thought I couldn't handle it on my own. I kept the phone on so Joseph could listen to the entire conversation between you and Logan.
Finally, everything clicked, and I understood. So, Steve had called Joseph and kept the phone on for him. Joseph, having listened to the entire conversation, got angry at me being mocked and deliberately asked Emily to confirm the compensation.
I wish I could have come sooner, but I was putting my daughter to bed. Sorry I'm late, but you could leave the rest to me.
I could have handled it by myself.
Emily snapping at Joseph is the usual scene.
Well, I have a role as a brother. I can forgive this guy for saying terrible things to my important brother and ruining the reunion.
Joseph's tone might be gentle, but his gaze never leaves Logan, showing a determination not to let him get away.
What the heck? Stutterman is a CEO. The guy who could only get into a third-rate university can't possibly have a decent job, especially with that way of speaking.
Stop calling him that. Stutter or not, my brother is more capable than any company president.
Joseph was about to pounce on Logan, which made him shocked and shut his mouth.
George's company is a logistics company that transports packages for online shopping. Do you know how many people are trying to start companies in this field now? It's apparently very profitable, so everyone's jumping into it. George started his company before online shopping became a trend, predicting this industry would hit big.
I remember my coworker doing something similar.
Nowadays, starting a logistics subsidiary is said to be profitable. Because you can start with just yourself and a vehicle, the low initial cost is one of the reasons.
But you can't expect huge profits from a subsidiary. Without enough hands, you can't transport many packages. That's where the big companies have an advantage.
Joseph continued proudly, as if it were his own achievement.
That big company is the one George started. A few years after he founded the company, that pandemic hit. Because of it, the demand for online shopping skyrocketed, and so did our sales. Of course, my brother's compensation would reach $10 million.
Joseph's words had Logan and everyone else, except Steve, who knew about my job, wide-eyed and speechless. I had told Steve about my job, but I hadn't mentioned it to the other classmates.
Your bonus was $50,000. Well, that's pretty good for you, isn't it? But you really picked the wrong person to mess with. George is on a whole different level. You've always looked down on him, but you're not even close to his level.
Joseph vented years of pent-up resentment towards Logan.
What the heck? You are just Stutterman. You can even say anything yourself, since always. Even now, you've had your brother step up and protect you. Don't you feel ashamed?
Logan was still not convinced, glaring at me. Joseph and Emily's gaze turned even colder.
We defend George because we have been helped by him so much.
What?
Steve, who had been silent, chimed in.
You called me a shadow earlier. Right. That's exactly right. But do you understand why I choose to follow George?
I don't know, and I don't care.
Logan answered, clearly annoyed.
George's way of thinking is truly amazing. He thinks completely differently from us, normal folks. Plus, he's incredibly smart, always teaching us stuff.
This guy could only get into a third-rate university, and his grades weren't that great either.
Indeed, my school grades were always around the upper middle.
George only failed his university entrance exams because he was sick that day. He always said he kept his grades in the upper middle on purpose. Only close friends knew, but George always ranked first in national mock exams.
Don't make stuff up. Ranking first in national mock exams, that's just talk.
Then, voices around us started saying, so that George was the George Miller, who ranked first in the national mock exams every time.
I never thought it was this George. I always thought the George Miller, who was always first in the national mock exams, was someone with the same name.
Ah,
George operates on a completely different level from us. School grades don't matter to him, good or bad. And it didn't matter to him which university he went to, because he knows he's talented. That's an undeniable fact.
Being praised like this is embarrassing, and I never shared these thoughts with anyone. But realizing Steve understood all this without me saying anything made me feel warm inside, grateful for such a good friend.
Take back everything you said about George having a bad memory and being stupid.
I had never seen Steve so angry before. Logan seemed a bit intimidated, avoiding eye contact, but he didn't apologize.
Logan Smith, you're a department manager at a system company, right? Come to think of it, that's one of the companies George still does business with, isn't it?
Emily, who had been busy searching for something on her tablet, spoke up. Yay, we still get requests from that company to do the final checks on their systems.
what are you talking about?
Logan was visibly shaken, not only by the mention of his company and position, but also by the revelation that his company was doing business with me. After leaving my previous job, I worked as a freelance system developer for a while. During that time, I got requests from your company and worked with them continuously. They kept asking me to join the company, promising a good position, but I always turned them down. Logan listened to me, dumbfounded. Even after starting my own company, they asked me to continue checking their complex systems, and that's the only task I've kept doing for them.
The talk about outsourcing. Only the high-difficulty system checks to someone. It was actually you.
Logan looked at me in disbelief.
So, essentially, George holds a higher position even in your company, Logan. I've sent recordings of all the rude things you said about him to your company.
What?
Logan was stunned by Emily's declaration.
What the hell are you doing? This is private stuff. That's crazy.
The only crazy one here is definitely you.
Joseph dismisses Logan, who is angrily crying, with a single retort.
I wonder how your company will react. Will they choose you or the irreplaceable talented system checker? Though, it's pretty clear what they'll decide.
Joseph looked triumphantly at Logan. In tears, Logan panicked and then clung to me.
George, please say something. Your brother and secretary are really crazy.
While I was surprised that Logan called my name for the first time, I sighed. You were saying how embarrassing it must be to have Joseph, Emily, and Steve stand up for me while I can say anything myself, right? But what about you?
Ah.
Logan looked utterly confused by my question. I've got folks who back me up when I'm insulted, but you. Looks like you're on your own, Logan. Now that's really something to be embarrassed about. Laughter erupted from those around us. Well, you just picked the wrong people to mess with this time. These two are unpredictable when it comes to me. Logan, his face red with embarrassment, silently left the venue. I sighed again, sorry for the commotion. Let's get back to our drinks, and sat back down next to Steve. As expected, the next day, Logan's company's CEO called me offering a heartfelt apology. Emily's response, dismissing the need for a personal apology in favor of seeing how the company would handle Logan, left me thinking I never wanted to cross her. And before the day was over, we were informed that Logan had been fired. Following that, unknown numbers bombarded our company, quickly identified as Logan's and blocked. After being suddenly fired, his wife demanded a divorce, and Logan went back to live at his parents' house, living a modest life, as Joseph mentioned. Thought about ruining his parents' house too, but let's leave it, Joseph mused, which honestly gave me chills, though I knew neither he nor Emily would do anything illegal. As for me, I continue to work, supported by Emily and Joseph. Steve mentioned at the reunion how they defend me because I've helped them, but I feel like I've only been helped by them. I mused while working. Hearing this, Emily and Joseph shared a look and laughed.
I think you and I agree on this one.
I think so too.
Confused by their agreement, I just tilted my head.
Being able to work in the same company as you is incredibly valuable. Seriously, it's inspiring every day. You're a real genius, George.
Even if my salary were cut to 1/10, I'd still want to work here. Working with you changes my perspective on life.
They said joyfully, but all I could respond was, "Is that so?" However, knowing that these two, whom I deeply trust, feel this way, it must really be true. I made a promise to myself to be someone worth following, someone they can believe in.
That high school grad's such a loser in society. He deposited like $1 in my bank.
At our 25th high school reunion, I overheard Jake mocking me. As I stepped out of the banquet hall to use the restroom and passed by the smoking area, I heard his voice. Peeking over, I saw Jake, now a bank CEO, chatting and laughing with some of his buddies. I knew right away he was bad-mouthing me. Jake, whose parents were high-ranking bureaucrats, always looked down on others. I'll leave just $1 and close my account. I muttered that to myself, unheard by anyone, and left the scene. My name is Mike, and I'm 43 years old. Today, I've come back to New York for the first time in years for our 25th high school reunion. Born and raised in New York, I moved to a small island in the Gulf of Mexico 15 years ago when I got married. Initially, I was worried about adapting to such a different environment, but as they say, home is where you make it. Now I've fully integrated into the island community. Hearing New York now feels distant, and I hesitated to attend this reunion. But with it being the 25th anniversary, and on my wife's advice, I decided to show up. There are only 3 ferries a day from the island. To catch the first one, I left home early and reached the city by evening. First, I met up with my best friend from high school, Tom. We stayed in touch even after graduation. Although we hadn't seen each other since I moved to the island, we occasionally communicated via social media. Tom, always smart, is now a successful lawyer. Yet, he hasn't lost his down-to-earth nature from our school days. We quickly reconnected and as a pre-reunion celebration, went out for drinks together. Our high school in New York was a prestigious academic institution, filled with promising students. It was a bland school where most students followed the path laid out by their parents. Eventually, I grew tired of studying, and while everyone aimed for prestigious universities, my future plans remained undecided. I was the only non-serious student in our year, a puzzle to both teachers and my own parents. Tom was the only one who didn't change his attitude towards me. He's a fine lawyer now, but at his core, he has always wanted to help the underprivileged. With his brain, he could have been a corporate lawyer, but chose to work in a small community law firm instead.
By the way, I saw Jake on the news recently. Can you believe it? He's the CEO of the Bank of America now.
Tom mentioned that, his face flushed from the alcohol. Jake, our former classmate, was the son of a high-ranking official in a major department. I had heard about the youngest bank CEO in history making it to the top, but never realized it was Jake. My dad was just a regular employee, so we didn't have much in common with the high and mighty. I remember Tom being overly cautious around Jake because his parents worked under Jake's father. Jake, taking advantage of this, often exploited Tom for menial tasks in the student committee. Regardless of our parents' statuses, I thought we should have treated each other as equals, but Tom seemed unable to stand up to Jake. Jake always liked bossing people around.
People like him end up in high places.
I never really liked him, I added. Tom gave a wry smile in agreement. On the day of the reunion, all our classmates seemed to have aged well and were leading decent lives. Having lived on the island for so long, I felt out of place in their conversations, like a newcomer to New York. A few others had moved to the countryside for their retirement, but living on an isolated island was unique to me. Sure, country living can be peaceful, but the lack of major hospitals on the island can be a concern. Many islanders have moved back to the mainland for this reason. However, the 360-degree ocean view on the island is unparalleled, and I found nothing to replace it. Plus, there's Emily, my wife. While I sat there, I couldn't help but think about returning to the island. As I was talking about this, Jake, the infamous bank CEO, joined in. He didn't just join us. He came to steal the spotlight. Jake always liked drawing attention to himself. When he was at the center of our classmates, his eyes always sparkled with ambition. When I congratulated him, saying, "Congrats on becoming the CEO," he casually replied with a smug look, "This is just the beginning of my era. I'll be a mover and shaker in the US?" I jokingly asked Jake, "So, Mr. CEO, how about setting up a bank on our island? It's inconvenient with just a post office." Jake smirked at my words.
Sure, I'll think about it. When that happens, Mike, you can be the manager. I'll make a special case for a high school grad like you.
I replied, "Thanks a lot. Honestly, my high school education doesn't bother me. Education is just a thing of the past." But Jake came from a family of bureaucrats and was shaped by a credential-focused society. He probably can't help but think this way. As adults, we just need to smile and let it pass. After some time, as the party was reaching its peak, I decided to head to the restroom. It was located at the end of a long corridor, but on the way, I passed by the smoking room where Jake and a few classmates were chatting. I don't smoke, so I intended to simply pass it by, but unfortunately, I overheard part of their conversation. They were talking about a high school grad, undoubtedly me, as I'm the only one such person in our school.
High school grads are useless in society. They deposit like $1 in my bank.
I heard Jake's words followed by their laughter. It brought back old memories. Jake never said it directly, but he always laughed at ordinary folks like me with his friends. I think that mocking others is a regrettable act, revealing one's own prejudices without even realizing it. It's surprising that someone still talks like that as an adult. It's crazy that such a person could become a bank CEO. I'll leave just $1 and close my account. I whispered to myself, unheard by anyone. My wife and I actually run hotels and inns on the islands in the Gulf of Mexico, and thanks to the tourism boom, we've been quite successful lately. We've renovated old houses with the help of famous architects. Our museum-like inn has been fully booked for the next 3 years. The Bank of America is one of our main banks, but I can't leave our hard-earned assets in a bank run by someone like Jake. I met Emily, my wife and business partner, when I was 25. After high school, I worked in construction for a year and traveled the world with the money I saved. I felt I had to leave the US to find my future. Back then, I blamed the US for being uninteresting, not realizing it was my lack of dreams. The world was vast, but walking through foreign cities, I didn't feel much joy. They seemed not so different from the US. Then, in Africa, I befriended a young man from a minority tribe and was invited to his homeland. There, I discovered the essence of enjoying life. Living simply in nature, their eyes sparkled more than anyone I'd met, and everyone was smiling. I had traveled to many developed countries, but nowhere had I seen everyone smiling like that. Even in the US. Despite the lack of material goods, people seemed fulfilled in a way that modern US, overwhelmed by possessions, were not. I realized what I, and perhaps modern US, were missing was known to these Africans. I lived with them for a while, learning how to enjoy life. Their children, intrigued by the rare American visitor, shared their culture and games with me. I realized the stark difference between us. They could easily speak of their good qualities, while I struggled to mention mine. A young girl asked me, "Why can't you see the good in yourself?" It wasn't the US that was boring. I realized that I hadn't found something I truly wanted to do because I never really took an interest in myself. After returning to the US, I decided to travel across the country with a map in hand. It dawned on me that I had never really known the US beyond New York. I wanted to visit various places and talk to different people. During my travels, I met Emily on a beautiful island in the Gulf of Mexico. I was captivated by the island's scenery and atmosphere and stayed there for a while, helping the locals. Emily was there. She was a part of the landscape. She was still about high school age, visiting the lighthouse on the Cape daily, gazing at the sea. The lady who Randy and I was staying at told me Emily was the only daughter of a local influential person, but had never left the island due to her frail health. There was only a middle school on the island, so for high school, one had to go to the mainland. However, Emily, often ill, couldn't do that. Studying alone from textbooks had its limits, so I offered to tutor her. I became one of her home tutors. Her parents were initially hesitant about a stranger like me, but once they knew the islanders trusted me, they gladly accepted my offer. I stayed on the island for about a year, teaching Emily. Then I resumed my journey, traversing every corner of the US for several years. This long journey made me realize the beauty of the US, but what stayed with me the most was the island where I met Emily. I wanted to live there forever. We kept in touch, and Emily hoped for my return. Her parents had grown to trust me, and when we reunited on the island, we got married. I was the one who proposed renovating the buildings on the island and promoting it. I wanted to make the island appealing for younger generations to move there, thus preserving the island's environment. Emily's parents agreed with the idea. That's how our grand project of revitalizing the island began. It was gratifying to see Emily, who thought she'd spend her life on the island in frail health, discovering her dormant talents through the project. She loved painting and created truly marvelous works. Together, supported by the islanders and her parents, we renovated the entire island into a significant industry, drawing global attention. But people like Jake, lounging in the comforts of New York, wouldn't understand its beauty. They believed they're the only ones moving society forward. The next day, I went to the Bank of America's head office, where Jake was. As soon as I handed my business card at the reception, I was swiftly led to the reception room. While Jake would scoff at hearing my name, mentioning my company would surely bring him out. As expected, Jake was visibly shocked to see me. "Here I am, doing exactly what you said," I began. Jake, sweating, asked what I said. "Yes, I've decided to move $700 million out of the bank, leaving just $1, I replied. Jake, never imagining I was a CEO, suddenly became subservient.
"Don't say that, Mike. We went to school together."
His sudden flip-flop was almost impressive. Was this how he climbed to the top of the Bank of America? But no matter how much he groveled, I knew his true nature. I couldn't entertain his talk now. "Sorry, but I'm moving the funds. I won't close the account though. Maybe I'll deposit again if I feel like it." Jake's eyes gleamed.
"Why move it then? Is this some kind of spite against me? You can predict what a poor man with money might do."
He finally showed his true colors. "That's your real thought, huh? Sure, I'm a newbie who's succeeded in business over the past 10 years. I don't know the right way to use money or manners, but I want to use what I have for the benefit of others." Jake half listened, half laughed at my serious talk. "I see, that's typical of someone who used to be poor, but why not let professionals manage your money? Just holding it won't increase its value. You have to try to grow it, he said, clearly not wanting my company's assets in another bank. It was as if he thought, what's yours is mine, and what's mine is mine. True, growing money is important, but we're talking about entrusting significant assets. The choice of where matters.
Then it has to be the Bank of America.
Jake exclaimed. He was evidently confident in his work. Or maybe he never doubted himself, always believing in his absolute superiority. Part of me envied Jake. He rode on a path laid out by predecessors, never having to doubt anything, something I felt I could never match. Even if Jake is right in his thinking, I just can't bring myself to like it. You think the most important thing in this world is money, don't you? I asked him. Jake laughed out loud.
Hot, even I wouldn't say that. Saying money is more important than human life would cause an uproar. Even if I think about it, I wouldn't say it.
So, you do think about it in your heart. Jake's face was marked with deep wrinkles, casting stark shadows. It almost felt like a devil smiling.
Mike, the world is undeniably moved by money. No matter how strong your sense of justice, it's fragile like a straw hut before money. I've seen it firsthand.
Which world is broader, the one Jake has seen or the one I've seen? I remembered my travels. The young girl from the African tribe I met probably didn't even know money existed. Yet she taught me something invaluable. I can't trust you, Jake, so I can't trust this bank you're leading either. I'm going to move my deposit. I stated it clearly. Emily would surely feel the same. But Jake was persistent.
You don't understand. You're on the rise now and not thinking ahead. In times of need, other banks won't lend you much. But I, as a schoolmate, would lend you what you need.
I was astonished at Jake's shamelessness. Schoolmate, you've been mocking me for being just a high school grad. You never considered me a friend, did you? Jake laughed. Mock you? Have I ever called you stupid? I might have mentioned you're a high school grad, but that's just a fact. It's trivial. So, to Jake, everything but money is trivial. He can pretend to be friends if it's for money. I grew sad, realizing we couldn't even have an honest conversation. It's strange how I could interact with people of different ethnicities, cultures, and languages, yet find such a vast difference in values with someone from my own country. I never considered you a friend, so please don't think of me as a schoolmate. It's creepy. I'll never forget Jake's pale, petrified face when I said that. A look of utter despair. Ignoring Jake, I moved our company's main banking elsewhere. When I told Tom about it, he sighed. Well, it can't be helped.
Sometimes it's better to cut ties cleanly, he said.
Tom had cut ties with his own father. Apparently, his father wanted him to pursue politics. He had always groveled under Jake's bureaucrat father. But Tom rebelled.
I tolerated Jake in high school, but to continue doing so in a world of entanglements.
He left his father to become a small-town lawyer, funding his own college education.
Your thinking is right, Mike. It's not about the outcome. What one feels in their heart is what's right. Jake has no heart.
I couldn't feel any heart in Jake's words. I had a feeling that dark clouds loomed over his future. Soon after, news broke that the youngest ever CEO of the Bank of America had resigned. His prejudiced remarks and intimidating behavior towards subordinates had leaked. In the past, such things might have been suppressed, but nowadays, the public gets wind of incidents first. Once spread in the vast internet world, information proliferates uncontrollably. Jake received numerous anonymous slanders, and plagued by distrust, he had to lay low for a while. I felt a bit sorry for him, but it seemed like poetic justice. A heartless person attracts heartless words, it seems. The island revitalization project was progressing well, with more young people wanting to move in. I shared with Emily my one wish: to invite the girl who had opened my eyes to the truth back then. I wanted to return to her African village and bring her to our island. If she refused, I'd understand. It was my own idea. But if she did, I plan to give her one of Emily's island paintings as a gift. Holding this precious painting, I set out to travel again, ready to share my own story with the girl.
I'm Mike, about to turn 50, and my son is about to graduate from college. We talked about taking a trip together just a few days ago as a celebration. I never imagined that just a few days later, I would lose my job. When I was laid off, a lot of things went through my mind, but the first thing I thought of was him. I got divorced when my son was in first grade. The fights with my wife became incessant, and after a long discussion, we decided to split. Deciding who would take custody of our son took even more time, but considering it's just us guys, it was decided that I should be the one to take in my son. Since then, I've tried to raise him well. He never really went through a rebellious phase, and since he became an adult, grabbing a drink together has become our daily routine, showing how close we are. We were both really looking forward to the trip, but now that's out of the question. When I told him about losing my job, he was shocked at first but then laughed.
If you can find a job soon, I'll support you.
I really think I've raised a good kid. But I can find it funny to be supported by my son, who has just entered the workforce. Besides, after graduating from college, my son has decided to move in with his girlfriend. She was a classmate at college and is a kind-hearted girl. Since my son and I lived just the two of us, we often ended up with ready-made meals, so she started coming over to cook for us occasionally. It seems she comes from a close-knit family. The stories she tells about her sister and parents are always heartwarming. She's the ideal girl for my son. I haven't heard them talk about marriage yet, but moving in together isn't something they're taking lightly, I suppose. For my part, I've been treating her like a future daughter-in-law. If her parents found out that the reason for canceling their living together plans was that her boyfriend's father became unemployed, they would definitely insist on breaking them up if they were in my shoes. I decided to start looking for a job immediately. However, probably due to my age, I mostly got rejected at the application stage. I finally managed to get an interview for a front desk position at a well-known local hotel. I had no experience in the service industry and wasn't confident, but the first interview went well, and it seemed like there were no issues. The next day, I was informed that I had passed the first interview and would proceed to the final round. It turns out the front desk job includes night shifts. Despite some health concerns, I started feeling hopeful about getting the job. It seemed like I could avoid becoming a burden to my son as an unemployed father.
At your age, leaving a long-time job as a medical administrator to come here. Did something happen?
The man, looking much younger, maybe around 30, asked me this with a sigh, legs crossed. I don't know what a normal interview is like, but unlike the first round, I wasn't even asked to have a seat, so I remained standing next to a metal chair. I had heard the final interview would be with the general manager and the front desk manager, who would be my direct supervisor. However, there was a problem, and the general manager couldn't attend the interview. Maybe because his boss wasn't there, this guy had an attitude right from the start. Under the director's policy, they wanted to bring in some fresh air.
Oh, I hear that a lot. You didn't take it literally, did you? Maybe your presence was just becoming a hindrance, and that's why they said it?
His tone got even sharper, and I couldn't respond.
You being quiet won't help. Some customers will be much harsher. So you can't get down with this, right?
I'm sorry.
What about your wife? Do you have kids?
I'm divorced. I have a son who is a senior in college.
So, your son is about to enter the workforce. Don't you think it's sad for a child to have an unemployed father as a role model?
I nearly blurted out that's why I was desperately looking for a job, but I feared he would retort that I should then act accordingly. So I carefully chose my words, and the conversation moved on. As a result, I couldn't properly answer any of the questions. I had finally made it to an interview, but I was sure I wouldn't get this job. Just as I began to think I might have to look for a part-time job, that concludes the interview, he said, as if reading my mind.
What were you thinking coming here at your age, huh?
Just before the door closed, I heard that sneer. He must have said it intentionally for me to hear. I thought I'd rather fail the interview and look for a part-time job than work under someone like that, but the next day, I got a call from HR telling me I was hired. As expected, the hellish days began. I started to think he hired me just to vent his stress because he blatantly picked on me. He, the front manager Simon, didn't properly teach me the ropes of customer service, which was already new to me. Other staff tried to help me out when they could, but they were stretched thin themselves. It was supposed to be a recruitment to cover for a staff member going on maternity leave, but then an experienced staff member found a new job and quit at the same time. They were all overwhelmed just keeping up with their own work.
I'm sorry, we can teach you.
Being apologized to by ones the same age as my son feels awkward. Moreover, there seemed to be many regular customers who often didn't give their names at check-in. Whenever I hesitated, Simon usually stepped in.
Sorry about this. He may look like this, but he's just a rookie.
He emphasized my being new at this age. Simon hardly ever helped me when I was struggling, except for these moments. What troubled me further was that everything had to be processed on a computer. I had used computers in my previous job, but learning the hotel-specific system at this age was incredibly challenging. Even when I asked the younger staff members, who were on shift with me, they were tech-savvy and couldn't grasp what I didn't understand, leaving me in a bind. I couldn't keep up with the night shifts either, and when I finally thought it was time for a nap, Simon wouldn't let it slide. Often, my break time ended while I was still standing at the front desk because there were no guests, and it was a good time to practice. Then, an incident occurred. That day was the eve of an entrance exam at a nearby college, and most of the business hotels in the area were fully booked. Many students ended up staying at our pricier hotel for the exam. Everyone checked out around the same time, in line with the exam schedule. The front desk was busier than I'd ever seen, and I was just wishing for my shift to end. Somehow, I made it through the rush and was beckoned by a younger staff member to the office. Apparently, even the senior staff hate working the night shift on this day every year, and it was unheard of for a newbie like me to be scheduled. It must have been Simon's doing. It felt awkward to be treated by someone younger, but I downed a coffee given as a gesture of appreciation in one go. By the way, Simon apparently always takes this day off every year. He's never around on busy days, which is actually a relief. I'd rather not deal with him. He whispered it to me on the sly. The rest of the staff were all great people. I can keep going thanks to everyone. Thank you. Just 5 minutes before clocking out, the phone rang, and I could tell everyone tensed up. Answering it would likely mean staying past my scheduled time. It should have been hard on everyone, having a newbie like me on shift during such a busy time. I steeled myself to at least handle the phone call, but that resolve was quickly broken. I remembered someone once saying, "Why do calls right before leaving always bring trouble?" A charm, under the pillow, yes, got it. Just by the words I uttered, those around seemed to sense the hassle. The caller was a father of a college applicant who had checked out. He explained that his daughter, desperate to pass her college exam, slept with a charm from her grandmother under her pillow and forgot it there. It might have been found by the cleaning staff if it was under the pillow, I thought, and felt relieved for a moment, but checking revealed no such item was found. Even after a thorough search of the room, it remained missing. When I told the father we couldn't find it, I heard him shout at his daughter over the phone, "Why would you put it there?" From bits of the conversation, I realized that the daughter hadn't placed the charm under the pillow, but inside the pillowcase. I know how stressful college exams can be. Having a college-aged child myself, I've heard of kids running away from home during exam season. And being in the pillowcase, the charm might be easier to find. It's okay, I will find it for sure. Please go to the exam without worry, I declared, but for some reason, the charm was nowhere to be found. There are often forgotten items on the beds, and though they're thoroughly checked, pillowcases aren't given as much attention, so it could have slipped inside during the change. After searching even through the trash and finding nothing, as I was about to give up 2 hours into overtime, I decided to check the room one last time. There, in a gap under the bed meant for wiring, I spotted something. Shining a light, I found a charm, inscribed with wishes for success. I let him know I found it.
"This means a lot to my daughter. Thank you,"
the father of the applicant said, very pleased. "I'm glad, and now I can finally go home." But then, Simon, who had started the late shift, showed up.
"Why are you still here?"
While other staff explained the trouble, Simon wouldn't listen.
"You didn't stay just to get overtime pay, did you?"
No, it was a young girl in trouble, about my son's age, so I just
think mentioning your kid excuses anything. That's why I never wanted to hire an old guy like you.
Seeing my exhausted expression, the staff arriving for the late shift asked if I was okay, but I don't remember what I answered. Before I could touch the door to leave the office, it opened on its own. A man in an expensive suit, not a uniform, looked at my name tag and smiled.
"Finally got to meet you."
General Manager. Good evening, sir.
Simon's usual sour demeanor vanished as he started talking to the general manager with a smile, as if it were all a lie. I was so surprised that I missed both the chance to greet and to leave.
"You are Dr. Johnson's son, right?"
I was slow to respond to a name I hadn't heard in a long time, and the general manager tilted his head in confusion.
"Oh, did I get it wrong?"
"No, you're right. You knew my father."
"I remember you too. My son and my grandkids have been taken care of by Dr. Johnson, you know."
Simon looked at us, clearly confused. "Dr. Johnson is my father. He's a doctor at a local clinic in town. It's a small place, but he's well respected, and many locals have been cared for by him since their childhood.
But why are you here?
It's a blessing, no doubt about it, but the clinic is always busy now. It's become like a gathering place for the elderly, similar to those seen in TV series about island clinics, so it's crowded. While there are indeed elderly people who are truly unwell, kids coming in for something like a cold often have no place to sit. My dad's solution to handle the situation was to start a nursing home. In my relaxed state, thinking someone would come to intervene, my dad said to me,
"You'll be running it."
I said that was impossible.
"Well, then you were fired. Go learn about service first,"
he said, and kicked me out. So, thinking a hotel would be a good place to learn about service, I ended up applying here among other places.
That's so like Dr. Johnson.
I originally worked at the clinic for my son's sake. My previous job paid well but had too much overtime, which wasn't ideal for raising a child. I asked my dad if I could work as a medical administrator at his clinic, and that's how I ended up there. Maybe he thought it was time for me to start a new path now that my son was graduating from college and would be out of my hands. As we talked amicably, I noticed Simon's face growing paler by the minute. No wonder, since the guy he'd been harassing was acquainted with his boss. The general manager remembered me from the clinic's reception and said he didn't join the interview because he intended to hire me anyway, just going through the motions. I wasn't planning to work here forever, and Simon seemed shocked enough, so I was going to let it slide. However, the pent-up frustrations of the other staff seemed far greater than mine.
"Simon, are you okay with not telling Mike to get out, like you usually do with him? So you told him earlier, you're staying late just for the overtime pay, right?"
They teased him relentlessly.
What's going on? Was Mike really staying this late after a night shift?
Well, you see, I wasn't aware of the circumstances.
Simon started making excuses, but everyone told him he hadn't really listened to my explanation. The general manager took him away, and he didn't return for an hour. Simon, who had a good external image, seemed to have been the general manager's favorite until now, but as rain was likely over. Just when I thought I could go to work worry-free the next day, I received a message from my son on the train home.
"I'm bringing my girlfriend over today."
Could it be that her parents found out I quit my medical administration job and switched to being a hotel front desk staff at my age? Technically, it was a career move to manage a nursing home, but from my father's attitude, nothing specific seemed decided. I worried about what would happen if they wanted to cancel the cohabitation, not to mention the marriage. These thoughts kept me wide awake despite having just finished a night shift. That night, my son didn't come home with just his girlfriend but 2 other people. She introduced them as her father and sister. Nervous about what would be said, her father spoke to me.
"Thank you for today.
Today."
Thank you for finding the charm."
They were the family who had forgotten the charm. She had moved from the neighboring county to attend the same college as my son and lived alone. Her sister, too fond of her, seemed to have decided to apply to the same college. She said her sister staying in her room tonight, but apparently her sister had planned to stay at a hotel for studying the night before the exam. She suggested her sister to stay where I work instead. She tilted her head, saying she must have told my son. Why he kept it from me would be a story for another time.
Given your son, I feel comfortable entrusting my daughter to him.
Hearing this, I hastily responded with a smile. 2 weeks after that whirlwind day, it was officially announced that Simon was transferred. He hadn't been to work since the next day, leading some to think he had quit. Actually, the general manager had taken him aside for retraining to avoid further inconvenience to the front desk staff, I heard. But I dared not ask for details. He was set to start over as a staff member at a chain business hotel. Thanks to Mike, I became an instant hero at the front desk. On a personal note, there was another piece of good news. Though I shouldn't rejoice as a father, my son's cohabitation plans with his girlfriend were put on hold, for a good reason. Her sister, if she passed the exam, wanted to live with her big sis. The girlfriend, too, felt concerned about her sister living alone, so they decided to postpone living together until after her sister graduated college. That means no marriage for another 4 years. Perhaps her sister had aimed for the same college and kept the charm in her pillowcase, wishing to get accepted there. We can live together a little longer, my son said with a complex expression as he drained his beer. Anyway, I felt a bit happy. Just like her sister isn't ready to be away from her, I guess I need a little more time to let go of my